Good morning, beautiful people. Welcome back to the second hour of LoveBabz, Love Talk on Babz, Rawls-Ivy. And this morning, I am talking to Judy. Do I say it Dworin?
Dworin.
Dworin.
Yeah.
So I don't know her, but I know Lynn Chamberlain, who serves on the board with me at Greater New Haven Arts Council. And she has suggested, there's somebody I think you would really enjoy talking to. I think she's terrific, and here's her, and she connected us. And so here we are. So you founded, you created the Justice Dance Performance Project.
That's right.
And it says moving for change since 1989. The Justice Dance Performance Project is an arts nonprofit that harnesses creative expression as a catalyst for positive change. JDPP uses dance theater performance and multi-arts engagement to examine social issues, build bridges of understanding across diverse communities, and inspire both individual growth and collective action. So the participants in the JDPP's programs discover untapped resources as they grow and heal, opening new and productive channels in the present and for the future. So tell me about this. How did this come about? Why did you start this? What was the call? What was the ministry?
Well, we started in 1989, and I was an independent choreographer, and I was looking to create a company and to have a place for that company to be located and to create pieces that really spoke out to issues in the world. And I think that performance is a tremendous vehicle for empowering a movement towards social change. And I think it just reaches us at very deep places and in a total way. And so it began, at first it was an umbrella for several independent artists, and then some based in New York. And eventually it kind of filtered down to being the company. And we began to create residencies in schools. And then eventually in 2005, started creating residencies in prisons.
So was that the dream? Like, did you start out saying, this is going to be a dance company for social change and social justice? Like, how did was that the beginning, or did you sort of like, you know what, I'm dancing, but there's some issues and I want to see if I can merge the two?
When I was in college, I was very interested in dance and knew that eventually I would become a dancer in my life. But I also was studying deeply about social justice issues. And they were always linked to me, so that my American Studies thesis, which was at Trinity, where I ended up graduating, was about racism, and sort of starting with John Brown and the Harper's Ferry Raid. And that was actually filmed by CPTV, and it just was a kind of core beginning. And when and so the work, and initially I think it had this sort of broader idea of a kind of connection to spirituality and to awakening of fullness in the human spirit. And then as I moved in further with it, I think there were just these issues that just kept popping up. And it felt like I needed to really speak to those issues more specifically. So I think it kind of merged into this. And there were pieces that were ranged from the Chernobyl disaster and the fallout that happened over Eastern Europe when I went, the company toured to Bulgaria, and we understood that more fully. And then into continuing to spotlight issues of racism, issues of gender as a woman. I grew up, I was 69, I graduated in 70, we were in the 60s and 70s. I'm definitely a person that lived through that time in a kind of deep way and wanted to carry that forward.
So how do you, so you start this dance company, you take on these social justice issues. Are there other dancers who sort of, like, how do you recruit them? How do they find you? How do you find them? And how do they buy into the mission of dance and social justice being a way to express what is happening?
Yeah. Some of the dancers, I mean, one of the dancers in the company has been with us since 1989. And she was actually, I taught at Trinity College for many years, and she was a student of mine there and joined the company when she graduated. I think people often, dancers come to us because the way that I work is through improvisational exploration. So I'm not really interested in walking into a group of people and saying, okay, here's what I want you to do, and giving specific movement phrases for everyone to learn. I'm interested in bringing in ideas and prompts, if you will, music with a kind of theme. In my mind, I have a vision for where this is going, but I really want to have each person in the company find that within themselves and explore that first. And so the pieces develop very much from the material that comes out of those improvisational explorations. And that's not that's not always a comfortable way for people to work. There, more often than not in dance companies, there is a tendency to bring something in and have it and have it be produced. And so to me, it's a community of creating artists. And we work together, although I am the outside eye that's pulling what I see together and asking people to remember things and recreate them. And so that the dances become choreographed and composed, but they generate from an improvisational place. And then the job of the company is to find that initial inspiration and infuse that in the piece that gets created and gets then communicated to other people. Through the years, we've also opened up to integrating theater into dance. So it's more of a hybrid form, so that there's often text or visual elements, music, of course, and sometimes song.
So it's a well-rounded experience.
Yes.
Of all the senses,
Yes.
So talk to me about the prison piece, because that I am quite interested in. How do you work with? Are they formerly incarcerated people? Do the prisons let you in and do this in prisons? How does this work?
Yeah, we started in 2005 at York Correctional Institution, which is the only state prison for women in Connecticut. And it was a kind of serendipitous way that it happened. The company had been invited to perform for a Volunteers for Prison conference. And at that conference, Wally Lamb was there, who's a novelist who was doing a writing group at York and did for many years, a wonderful writing group. And after we performed, he talked to my colleague, Kathy Bortek-Gerson, who's the Associate Artistic Director, and asked her if we were ever interested in working in a prison. And, I never had thought about a prison, even though the work by then was very much wanting to speak out and give voice to those who didn't have a voice. And clearly, if we want to think of a population that doesn't have a voice, those in prison are certainly that population. So even though it was an idea that occurred to me beforehand, it really intrigued me as he said it. And I said, and so we explored it, went in and met the women. And after that first meeting, I knew that we were going to be there for a long time. And we have been. So we've been there since 2005. And, the prison does allow us to go in. We've worked very hard at establishing a cooperative relationship with the prison, and they've really stretched, I think, and our program has grown from a year-long performance residency, which we still do, even in COVID. We haven't been able to go in. We have not been able to go in, but we've been allowed to send prompts through correspondence. The women have written back, so we haven't been able to be with them creating performance that they can do. They have been still creating material during this time. So we have a year-long performance residency, and that in the old days, and I hope will be reinstated, we would do 4 performances, 2 for women in the compound and 1 for outside invited guests and 1 for families of the women. Very, very powerful performances, among the most powerful that I think I've ever experienced as a creative performance, and with a wonderful team of teaching artists that works with me. And so we also created a moms and kids program there, so that there's a way for moms and their kids to interact normally and through the arts, dance and sing and create art together. We then realized that there are all these kids out there that have parents in prison and are really feeling the separation of that. And we started programs in schools for kids who have parents in prison. And then we saw that some of our people were coming out, and we created a vehicle by which we could stay in touch with them when they reenter. And we were also invited by the Department of Correction to start a program for dads at Cybulski Correctional in Enfield. And that program has also been going on through COVID. And we're in fact are starting to be able to have intermittent virtual meetings with the dads there. Yeah, we're hoping that can happen.
So how do you teach dance in prison to women who might be distrustful, might not have ever danced in their lives in this way? Mm-hmm. How do you build a choreography around? You start with the theme, and then you share the theme, and then everybody sort of interprets that theme. Like, what's the creative process?
Okay, so yes, we start with the theme, and this residency is definitely multi-art. So there's dance, there's spoken word, and there's singing, and the team that goes in. There are 2 teaching artists for each area that I just said, and they work with this. First, we work as a whole group, and the women understand what the theme is, and they do writing. So the first, from September to December, they're submitting writings, and we're meeting monthly to. Now, this is again the way it used to be, and we'll see where it all goes.
Pre-COVID.
And we would each month share the writings together, and eventually I would script those writings. In the meantime, because I'm actually in this project, I'm really working with the speakers, and my associate, I mentioned before, Kathy Bortek-Kirsten, and a colleague, Tracy Lombardo, are working with the dancers, and Leslie Bird and Angela Brown are working with the singers. So we're meeting as a team, and Lisa Matthias is working with me, and we're working as a teaching team to figure out, from this theme and from these writings, where do the dances, what are the dances that we're going to create? What are the songs that are going to get created? And when we go back in January, the women split into their various interest groups, and those things are developed. So, Kathy and Tracy, I think when they're working with the women in dance, they're starting really, everybody does a movement warm up. So I think that one thing that's important to say is that regardless of whether it's spoken word, singing, or dance, everybody begins with the body. So that I think that for me, that's fundamental to the work, is that we're grounded in our bodies. We feel our whole selves before we start working in whatever direction we're going to work. And so I think that in the dance group, for instance, they have a warm up, and then I think there's some improvisational exploration, and there's some creating. There's a lot of input from the women. It's very similar to the process that we work with in the company, only it is at a different level, because the women are coming. Some have had dance experience beforehand, most not so much, but everybody's willing to try. And they're also, prison is a place where you normally would be kind of detached from your body. You're in this place, you're being, it's a very alienating place in terms of self. And so that it's really important to all of us on the team to help to ground the women back into themselves and into creating or recreating or rediscovering an identity that they have that may be pushed down in the place that they are, but that is so important to remember, because we also have to remember that those that are in prison are coming out, and that if prison is going to do anything, it's going to ideally help to, I don't know if rehabilitate or help is the right word, because it feels like it to rediscover and grow in a new way. And I really see that happening with these women and with the dads that we work with in a different way. We work with them in a different way, but always there's these 3 parts. There's movement, there's learning how to find your voice, to speak it out, to move it out, and to sing it out. And I think that those 3 ingredients are just really powerful.
Mm. So outside of the prison, um, the dance company looks like what? Like what prison is one part. Do you take on social issues of the day? Like talked about the being in Bulgaria, but here we are this is another time. Do you get inspired by these times to create like we're watching an invasion in real time
Yeah, right.
in
Yeah.
in Ukraine, and Black Lives Matter is still very much with us. And so how do you pick and choose the kinds of things that you want to dance and focus on?
Yep. Okay. Great question. It very much is responsive to the times, and there's something that will, so that we have created, I mean, that Bulgaria piece that I mentioned was a very early piece that we did. And because we went to Bulgaria in 1990, but now, I mean, especially in this COVID time, what we did a couple of things. I mean, we really had to, during COVID, reinvent ourselves because
Mhm.
we couldn't perform in theaters. We couldn't have rehearsals together for a long time. So I, really started to think about, well, what do we need to do? There's this COVID thing going on. There's this George Floyd has just been murdered in front of our eyes, and what are we going to do? So we created a platform, a virtual platform called Response and a Call, which was for all of the artists of color that are part of JDPP and now going beyond JDPP. And it was a 3 times a year platform that allowed for the expression of dance and the other arts in expressing what it is to be a person of color in this country at this time. And that's been an amazing platform that's opened and continues to kind of grow. We've begun to invite other artists outside of our community, our JDPP community, to join in. And Melissa Craig, who's a performer with us, and a beautiful Black woman that I work with closely, and she's a co-curator of this project, and eventually I think will be the curator of it. And it could go. We're moving from all virtual to virtual streaming, and eventually to and so we're performing much more often. I think we're in the public eye more often because of the virtual component. Whereas we brought our rehearsals out to the public. So we created a piece before COVID started. We'd been invited by the New Britain Museum of Art to create a piece called Color Fields in response to an exhibit they had by Helen Frankenthaler, who's an abstract expressionist artist. In any case, we couldn't be in the gallery, so we for a while we eventually did, but we created pieces. The company, we had rehearsals on Zoom, so the company was creating work in response to natural elements. So that whole feeling, and this is kind of a long way around to say where I am now, but that, because Helen was very influenced by nature in her work and color, it was a very healing project to work on in the midst of COVID, and the healing aspect of the natural world really struck me. And because at the moment, we're not performing in theaters yet, and we are performing outdoors, and so a piece began to germinate for me about trees and about environmental justice, and the idea of how we can learn from forests, where forests are healthiest when they're diverse. They communicate with each other under the ground and help each other when they're in trouble. And they're also going to be a main component to saving the earth as we continue to destroy them. So how to bring that forward? So the piece we're working on now is called In the Presence of Trees, and it's bringing out issues of so the critical issues of social justice that I think trees are resolving a whole lot better than we are, and bringing trees into the public spirit and eye, encouraging them to be more in public spaces and to work on the idea of how do we heal ourselves from this divisive, terrible place that we found ourselves in. And yes, with a war that's just unbelievably horrible that we read about every day and see people just anyway, so So that's that feels like a current thrust of where we're going. And then we do the prison work a lot, so that the pieces that the women couldn't perform in the prison, we had permission from the prison to take some of those pieces out to the public. And we did at the Harriet Beecher Stowe Center a piece called Emergence, which was about what it is to emerge from prison. And, prison is a microcosm for so many things that are wrong in our culture, racial and inequities, all of it. You see it firsthand there. And you also see the incredible possibility that exists within those in prison. So we bring their voices out, and those pieces we've been performing recently as well. So, yeah.
So do you find that now that you figured out how to make the virtual thing work, and I like the fact that you sort of said more people could get to see it.
Yeah.
More people get to see it. And so if we ever get back to normal, would you incorporate in person and virtual? Like, would you give up virtual? I'm always curious if people would give up virtual.
No, we won't give up virtual. I think we found a lot of benefits in, people that are across the country as well as in other parts of the world can access what we do virtually, and which doesn't mean that we would give up live performance, because honestly, we've been able to rehearse in person for the first time in these last 2 months. And I feel like it's this privilege or blessing to be in the room with everybody. It's like, it's an emotional experience to walk in and to be with these people that I love working with. And I'm not looking at them at a screen. I'm actually in the room with them, and they're able to contact each other. And this beautiful dance work is starting to generate. And so we'll never give that up, hopefully. But we found a way for it to survive in, virtually. And then from doing that, we found the benefits of virtual stuff. For instance, when we did that piece, Color Fields, that I mentioned, audiences came in and were able to watch our process 4 different times. Like at the very beginning of the process, they were able to see what we were doing. And we've never done that before. If we'd been in a studio, I don't think it would have even occurred to me to invite an audience to come in the first 2 months of the piece and see what we were doing. But in a sense, when they could access it so easily, and it gave us a chance to keep reaching out. So I do think it's a benefit. I think the response and call series that's been virtual has been incredible, and it's been a way to give voice to those to the issues of racial inequity and all that's gone on in a consistent way, and to reach out and to build our access to a community of people that care about those issues. An even wider community. Yeah.
So I love the creative process of people. I love artists. I love talking to artists because I feel like artists are the true revolutionaries of the world. Art gives voice to things that we ourselves, other mere mortals, can't speak of or put words to or embrace in our hearts and minds. So artists gives us opportunity to sort of do that. So talk to me about, where do you see your company going? Where would you like to take it? What road or path have you not explored that you're like, someday?
It's a great question, and it's interesting also because we're so living moment to moment right now, like changing.
Yes.
like tomorrow I thought I was doing this, but now I'm going to do that.
And there are no real plans, right? Like right. We don't really plan.
There's a plan A, B, C, and D.
Yes.
So, I love doing this work, site-specific work. I love going into communities to perform rather than asking communities to come to a theater to see. Even though I've loved doing performance work. My husband is a lighting designer, and he's, he hasn't been able to do what he does with us, but it's magical. But I would like to keep exploring the site-specific piece of it. and to see where that goes, to see how it reaches people. You know, I the trees piece will keep me busy for another year and a half. I mean, it's not a piece that will happen like in the next 2 months. So I like to spend time working on things. We're going to be visiting a lot of different sites and performing there, and just to feel what it is to perform in those different places. And I think to keep the virtual, I'd like, you know, I'd like to clone myself, but, but I have a team that is so excellent, and I'd like to keep be able to expand that team. We're in the schools. Kathy runs the schools program, and we've been able to get back to these young kids that need it so badly, and bring them to the place of the arts. I think that my feeling is that I want what we do to be more widely available to people, and so that it can really do the work that it is so ready to do. I do want to. I want to keep impacting the world in some whatever small way. You know, I keep thinking of the huge problems that we confront, and sometimes it's possible to just feel hopeless and powerless. And I think that that's a very dangerous place to be, because at that moment we have to really understand that even the smallest change is a big change. And if enough of us do those small changes and keep doing them in a consistent way, we will change things in some way. And so I think that that is the commitment that I have, and will continually look for ways to do that most effectively, without compromising the quality of what I believe we do. Because I think the work has a real integrity. And I would always want that to be the underpinning of its message and of its process. The process of creating work is almost as important as the product, because the product is different if you don't pay attention to the process, I believe, in terms of the energy you're putting out into the world. And so I think that's the vision. I mean, I've lived a long life and hope to live a longer one, but I won't be here forever. And I hope that it will keep going and keep building and keep making things possible.
Mm. So how do you fund the creativity and the hope? How do you fund that? Because there's a business side to this.
Yeah.
Like you have to pay people, and you have to rent space, and you have to sometimes sell tickets, and you have to, there's a whole other back end business, support piece to this. How do you manage that? How do you develop that? How do you not let it stop you from your creativity?
Yeah, it is a business, and we apply for grants constantly. So we're funded. We have a very large grant funding, and we also our individual donations. We've had virtual fundraisers for the last few years. We decided over COVID that we were no longer going to charge for tickets, because we really wanted access to be more open than it would be if we charged for tickets. So we've just gone on a donation basis, and it's actually been as successful just to ask people for donations as it has been to have sold tickets in the past. And so we'll see how long we can keep that going, especially if we move back into theaters, if that will be possible. But I think access is really important. And so it's the generosity of the donors that exist in our communities, as well as, and we have a wonderful grant writer, Jennifer Eifrig, who, and she and I work on grants really on a very full-time basis, even though we also have about 6 other jobs at the same time. So it's not easy. I think COVID was a really big challenge I think every arts organization, probably every nonprofit, had to really see whether they could survive through. We were able to do that. Also there was an additional federal funding that really helped. So we'll keep doing that. I think the worry will be as if things begin to tighten up, if people, our economy is such that people really can't, and foundations can't be as generous, then it will be hard. We're small. We have an administrative team of 4. That's it. And those four individuals, we kind of, and we have the teaching artist team, and we have lots of planning meetings with all of them. We have planning meetings during COVID. We were completely remote during COVID, and are still partially so. More than half, I'd say more 3/4 partially. So, and we had daily staff meetings, sometimes 2 hours a day, just to think how we were doing it. And I mean, that 2 hours would be max. An hour would be a short meeting, and just kept planning how to turn around. And so I think it's not easy, but it's possible, and we've been able to survive. And well, I think and our future's not threatened in that way at the moment.
Well, I have enjoyed this conversation, Judy. Before I let you go, I want people to know that they can go to your website, jdpp.org, and get a sense of what y'all are about and your programs. That people can get involved. They can donate.
Yep. Always very happy to receive donations.
Always happy to get, and we're on a few steps away from the great give. So I'm sure people will be looking at your organization for some of that, for that kind of kindness. Is there anything that you have coming up that people should know about? Is there any performances coming up?
We do have a Response and a Call virtual performance that will be streamed as well, and that is coming up on June 10th at 7. And then in July, dates are still probably either July 19th or 21st. The first incarnation of In the Presence of Trees will be performed in Bushnell Park in Hartford.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, keep me informed of that, because I'd like to come to that. That would be the right time of year too.
Yeah.
That would be lovely. I would like to see that. So, well, you know what? Lynn did a great job of putting us together. She was dead on for doing that, because I've enjoyed this conversation very much.
Me too.
And I'm looking forward to staying connected to you and hearing what y'all are doing, and maybe catch a performance or two.
Okay, sounds great.
Thank you, Judy. I appreciate your time this morning, and enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of your week.
You too. Okay, take care. Bye.
All righty. Okay,
Bye.
Harry, we're on our way out, and we'll be back tomorrow. Tomorrow's Thursday. I've got Matt Taylor. I'm looking forward to that conversation as well. This has been a talking week, baby. We have been doing the talking. So I will see y'all. Be good out there in these streets. Mask up, vaccine up, and don't hurt nobody.
Hi, this is Babz Rawls-Ivy from New Haven, Connecticut, and you're listening to WNHHLP 103.5 FM, streaming live at newhavenindependent.org.